My name is Dave Clifford, you are watching Live Prog, and I would like to point out later this year we have the new Red Jasper album, The Great and Secret Show. Make sure that you go to redjasperband.com for more info and get it. We really want your money.
Hello, welcome to Live Prog. I am your host Marcel Haster. And yes, it is time for a new video review. The band I'm going to bring to you was formed in 1987. They released their first album then. They released a couple more albums throughout the years, one of them in 1990, and that one is important for this review. In 1997, they released their fifth and last studio album and sadly, well, kind of disappeared. However, they resurfaced many years later, early 2010, to get back together and work on new material. Now, while they were doing that, they found a label in England called Angel Air willing to re-release their back catalogue. Mind you that some of their music was never released on CD. Now, the album I have for you is that second album of this band that has not been available on CD before, but 22 years after its original release, we now can enjoy it on digital, small quality. Red Jasper, Sting in the Tail.
Your toast, scan the paper for the headline, but you know what bothers you most. When you're shaving, looking in the mirror, nobody looks back at you. Your face is slowly disappearing, soon you'll be faceless too.
I say small because, well, I personally prefer this one. As you can see, it's a tad larger. Here we have the rear. Hope you can see it with the track listing and the lineup. Now, there's one difference. Here we have the lineup of the CD, which is a little bit different. Not just in the fact that, of course, you don't have to, well, flip it like you have to do with a vinyl, but it has some additional tracks. And these additional tracks come from this EP, a 12-inch. Backside, and I hope you can read it, 3 tracks. Now, very nice. This album was released a year about before they released Sting in the Tail. And they had a lineup change there, and they had a couple of lineup changes in the early days. And the lineup change was the fact that they switched drummers. On the A side of this EP, Mark Ollard is doing the drums. On the B side we find a familiar name, David Clifford. He joined the band when they were recording this EP. David Clifford is also the drummer on this one, Sting in the Tail. Now, if we're talking about him, let's look at the rest of the lineup. And the first name that is very important in this one is Davy Dodds. And the second one, Robin Harrison, because these two gentlemen, Dodds and Harrison, they formed Red Jasper back in 1987. Here we have them. And here's another old picture. They formed Red Jasper in the begin days of the, well, neo-prog era, as we would say it. And at that time, well, they were heavily involved in folk music, in a bit of a protest music. You still had some remnants of the punk era. So all these things got together, and in those days they were, well, working on progressive rock, which was not easy for them.
Lost its hold, its bonds grow.
Nevertheless, I say when you listen to this album, it is real interesting to hear how the band developed into well, the more neo-prog sound that we would hear in the early 90s with what we also like to refer to as the Shakespearean duo, A Midsummer Night's Dream and The Winter's Tale. But let's stay with this one, otherwise we're moving on to probably a next video review. The third person in the lineup is Mr. Tony Heath, who is doing a bass guitar, a lead guitar, acoustic guitar and keyboards. They didn't have a standalone keyboard player at that time. Later on, Mr. Lloyd George would take up that duty in the band. After this album, Tony Heath left Red Jasper. Then we have Pat Darcy doing saxophones, background vocals and a little bit of bass guitar. He also left the band after they released this album. And then we have, of course, as I mentioned, Mr. David Clifford. Now, this David Clifford may sound very familiar to you, because if you've been following the musical works of Clive Nolan, you will know that he took over his lead role in She the Musical. He will also play a part in the next musical, Alchemy. So keep an eye on that, because there you see David Clifford in a different role as singer, while in this album he was the drummer. In the current form of Red Jasper, Mr. Davy Dodds decided not to join in anymore, and David Clifford is taking up the role of lead vocalist. Now, I showed you a little picture, but well, there are more pictures in this booklet. Here we have him, a very young Mr. David Clifford. Nevertheless, if you listen to the album, especially if you listen to the drum sound, you will hear that he is a fantastic drummer. And here we have the whole gang, and you can see they're quite young back then. The vocals of Davy Dodds are very characteristic for the sound of Red Jasper. If you had the chance to see the band live on stage in the early 90s, you will certainly remember Mr. Davy Dodds. Not just the way his vocals sound, but also the way he looked. You know, he looked like if he walked right out of a Shakespearean play, or maybe even a Shakespearean era. You know, with his pipe and the whole folk dressing, the tin whistles he plays, the mandolin he plays, you know.
Secret society, they wanna keep it hidden from you and me. Too late for enemy, too late for KGB. They wanna keep it hidden from you and me. Tighten bureaucracy, castrate democracy, sound like sincerity.
Very interesting character, and for me, I saw them in '94 at the very first concert I ever attended. He made a big impression on me, and well, so did the whole sound of the band. But nevertheless, this is of course a different sound, because well, it is from an earlier period, and you hear that. It is more folky, less proggy. It has some politically charged songs in it. One of them is well, very obvious, of course, Guy Fawkes. In England, probably everybody knows it. In Holland, it may be less known. But nevertheless, if you listen to the lyrics and just the whole phrase, you know, out with politicians out, I think a lot of people in many countries will really enjoy those lyrics. Well, it's music, of course, and a lot of music is used as a bit of a protest. Other songs on this album already give you an idea of how the band would sound later on. Songs like Second Coming, Old Jack, Magpie, they have this characteristic Red Jasper sound in them, with the tin whistles and the whole folky, proggy, well, thing, you know? So it's nice to see how the band developed. I am really happy that they included the songs from Pull That Thumb Off the Top of Your Head, because again, this is even older material, and you know, this whole release gives you a good insight of how the band was in their early days and how they developed until the band they became, well, in their most known period. And then of course we can look forward to brand new material, which will sound again a little different, yet characteristic Red Jasper. If you're not familiar with the band, I would not suggest to buy this album as a starting point, because it might maybe turn you off a little bit. I'd go for the Shakespearean Twins, and there's a large chance that I will be doing a video review of them as well. But if you're familiar with the band and you have not been able to get a copy of this album, then well, here's a good chance. It is on CD now. You can probably buy it in every shop, hopefully, or check our partner Beyond Rock. They probably can help you with a copy of it. And get yourself a copy of Music History from a very exceptional band, Red Jasper, Sting in the Tail.